And I suppose with that, we should bring down the music and bring up the cameras, if I remember to do that. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Sunday night edition of Accessibly Live, the book club reading room. Hope everyone's having a really good night tonight. I am up against the Super Bowl, and I haven't a clue what the hell's going on with it, but they're playing football. Mm-hmm. And um, it. I'm looking forward to a good game. I'm hoping it's a good game. Actually, I'm looking forward to the um, seeing the new movie trailers that are supposed to be coming out. Still hoping to see if we get Avengers Doomsday. Keeping fingers crossed. Hope everyone's having a good night tonight. Tonight, we are continuing the adventures of Nancy Drew and the Secret of the Old Clock. The first of the Nancy Drew mysteries that spanned from the 1930s to present day. And a lot of similarities. We talked about this last week. A lot of similarities between Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys because the company that created both are the same. And we'll talk about them. We're going to do a little more in depth next week and talk about the syndicate. And it's not like gambling or crime family, but the syndicate is the group of writers that got together in a big room and took the ideas from one person and ran with it to create multiple stories for not only Nancy Drew but Joe and Frank Hardy. Kind of excited about that and looking forward to continuing the story. Don't forget, and a lot of you have been already taking advantage of it, Joel K _OG at protonmail.com. Let me know where you guys are watching from. I've gotten a few messages from around the country. Thank you. Appreciate everybody stopping in. And I know that you guys can't do it on Sunday live, particularly when I'm up against the Super Bowl. And I don't know. It's going to be football, and it'll be the last game of the season, and we will see how that goes. Now, don't forget, too, that for us, it helps me out if you guys get a moment to like and subscribe. It really is a benefit to click the like button, hit the thumbs up button, like and subscribe. Tell your friends, tell the people on the street, tell your aunts and uncles that there's an old guy reading books on Twitch and also YouTube. We do put this on YouTube if you get a chance to miss it. If you have to miss it, always remember we are putting out the same show on YouTube. It is tape delay. You are live here on Twitch. I think that we need to get going into the book. Last time we were with Nancy Drew, she had been captured by the thieves that were emptying the house and all the lucrative treasures that were inside it. And now she's been put inside this closet, locked up, and has come to realize that she may starve to death. We shall see. This is chapter 13. Don't forget, we are reading chapters 13, 14, 15, and 16 tonight of Nancy Drew, Secret of the Old Clock, here on Accessibly Live. Chapter 13, The Frustrating Wait. At first, Nancy was too frightened to think logically. She beat upon the door with her fists, but the heavy oak panels would not give way. "Help! Help!" she screamed, at last exhausted by her efforts and forced to open the door. She sank down on the floor. The house was silent as a tomb. Bad as her predicament was, Nancy felt thankful that enough air seeped into the closet to permit normal breathing. Although she had little hope that anyone within miles of the cottage, Nancy got to her feet, raised her voice, and again shouted for help. Her cries echoed through the empty house and seemed to mock her. Oh, why didn't I have the sense to tell Helen where I was going? She berated herself miserably. The girls at camp will never dream that I came here. Then Nancy remembered mournfully that her father thought she intended to remain at Camp Avondale for a week. He would not become alarmed over her absence until it was too late. Someone may find my car at the end of the road, Nancy reasoned, but it isn't very likely. Few persons pass this way so early in the season. She wondered with a shudder what had become of Jeff Tucker. The thief called Sid had hinted that the caretaker had received some same treatment as Nancy. If he was locked up somewhere, she could expect no aid from him. Those thieves will get so far away that even I couldn't get out of here. I'd soon be too late. As the full significance of the situation dawned upon Nancy, panic again took possession of her. In a desperate attempt to break down the door, she threw her weight against it again and again. She pounded on the panels until her fingers were bruised and bleeding. At last she sank down on the floor to rest and tried to force herself to reason calmly. I'm only wasting my strength this way. I must think logically. Nancy recalled that it was sometimes possible to pick a lock with a wire. She removed the bobby pin from her hair and opened it, and began to work the lock. But in the darkness, she could not see and make no progress. About 15 minutes, she gave up the task in disgust. It's no use, she said dejectedly. I'll guess I'll be here for a good time. She began to think of her father, of Hannah Gruen, of Helen Corning, and other dear friends. Would she ever see them again? As despondency claimed Nancy, she was dangerously near tears. This will never do, she reprimanded herself sternly. I must keep my head and try to think of some way to escape. The trapped girl began to rummage in the closet, hoping that by some luck she might find a tool that could help her force the lock open on the door. Nancy searched carefully through the pockets of every garment which hung from the hooks. She groped over every inch of the floor. She found nothing useful, however, and a cloud of dust which had stirred up made breathing more difficult than before. The closet had become uncomfortably warm by this time. Longingly, she thought of the fresh air and cool lake water which she had closed off from. Then, unexpectedly, Nancy's hand struck upon something hard. Quickly investigating with her fingers, she discovered a wooden rod suspended high overhead. It was fastened to either side of the wall and ran the length of the closet. Evidently, it had been used for dresses and coat hangers. I might be able to use that rod to break a panel out of the door, Nancy thought hopefully. It feels strong and about the right size. She tugged the rod with all her might. When it did not budge, she swung herself back and forth on it. At last, amid the cracking of plaster, one side gave way. Another hard jerk brought the rod down. To Nancy's bitter disappointment, she found that the rod was too long to use as a ram in this cramped space. But after further examination, she discovered that it had pointed ends. I might use this rod as a wedge in the crack, she thought hopefully. The young sleuth inserted one end of the space between the hinges and the door and threw her weight against the rod. At first, the door did not move in the slightest. That old Greek scientist Archimedes didn't know what he was talking about when he said he could move the world with a lever, Nancy murmured. I'd like to see him move this door. As she applied steady pressure to the rod a second time, she saw that the hinges were beginning to give. Encouraged, Nancy again pushed full force on the lever. "It's coming!" she cried. Once more she threw her weight against the rod. A hinge tore from the casing and the door sagged. It was now easy to insert the wedge, and Nancy joyously realized the success would soon be hers. With renewed strength, she continued her efforts. Just then, another hinge gave way, and she was startled to hear footsteps. Someone came running into the study, and a heavy body hurled itself against the closet door. For a moment, Nancy was stunned. Could this be one of the thieves who had come to hear the noise she made and had returned to make sure that she did not escape? She discarded that theory quickly. Surely the three men who had got far away as possible. Who is this newcomer? One of the Tophams? "So one of you ornery robbers got yourself locked up, did you?" came an indignant male voice. "That'll teach you for trying to put one over old Jeff Tucker. You won't be putting any more pilfering. I got you surrounded." The caretaker. Nancy heaved a sigh of fervent relief. "Let me out," she pleaded. "I'm not one of the thieves. If you'll only let me out of here, I'll explain everything." The silence for a moment. Then the voice on the other side of the door said dubiously, "Say, you aiming to throw me off?" Imitating the lady's voice. "Well, it won't do you any good. No, sir. Old Jeff Tucker's not getting fooled again." Nancy decided to convince the man beyond doubt. She gave a long, loud, feminine scream. All right, ma'am, I believe you. No man could make that racket. This way out, lady." Expectantly, Nancy waited, but the door did not open. Then she heard, to her dismay, "If that ain't the limit. The key's gone, and I've left my ring of extra keys somewhere, not in my pockets." Nancy groaned. "Oh, Mr. Tucker, you must find it. Have you looked in every one of your pockets? Please hurry and get me out." "Hold on, ma'am," the caretaker said soothingly. "I'll check again." Nancy was beginning to think that she would still be able to break down the door when she heard Jeff Tucker exclaim, "Found it! You were right, ma'am. The key was in my back pocket all the time." "Please open the door," Nancy broke in desperately. The key turned the lock and the bolt clicked. Joyfully, Nancy pushed the door open and stepped out. For a moment, the bright sunlight in the room almost blinded her. When her vision adjusted, she saw a very tall, thin, elderly man in blue shirt and overalls. He stared at her with concern and amazement. "Mr. Tucker," she quickly explained, "I'm Nancy Drew. I came here looking for you when those awful thieves locked me in the closet." She paused and gazed at the caretaker. "I'm glad to see you're all right. Their leader told me they'd locked you up, too." Then she asked the elderly man to tell her his story. Jeff Tucker seemed embarrassed when he began to speak. "I was plain hornswoggled by those critters, Miss Drew. They pulled up here in a moving van and told me I'd better get after some trespasser they'd seen nearby." So the elderly man went on with a sigh. "I believed him. One of the men went with me down to the lake and locked me in the shed. I just got out." He shook his head sadly. "And all this time they were robbing the place. Guess I'll be fired." Secretly, Nancy was inclined to agree, knowing the Tophams, but aloud she said reassuringly, "Don't worry, Mr. Tucker. We'll report this robbery to the state police immediately. Perhaps the troopers, can catch the thieves before they get rid of the stolen furniture." The caretaker looked somewhat relieved. "And I can sure give a good description of those crooks. I'll never forget their ugly faces." "Fine," said Nancy. A sudden thought struck her. "Oh, before we go, Mr. Tucker, tell me, was there an old clock in this house? A tall, square-faced mantel clock?" Jeff Tucker, bright blue eyes squinted. "Mantel clock? Why, sure." He pointed to the mantel over the fireplace. Sat right up there. Got so used to seeing it I couldn't remember for a minute. Don't know how they came to took that. Never thought it worth much. The Tophams never bothered winding it. Nancy's pulse quickened. Knowing that the clock had been stolen, she was more eager than ever to have the thieves apprehended. She urged Jeff Tucker to hurry out of the car. Where's the nearest state police headquarters? She asked him as they climbed into the convertible. There's none till you get to Melbourne, Miss Drew. We'll hurry. Nancy headed as fast as possible for the highway. Would she succeed in heading off the thieves and recovering the old Crowley clock so she could learn its secret? Chapter 14. A tense chase. Which way is Melbourne? Nancy asked the caretaker when they reached the highway. Down there, he pointed. That's the direction the thieves took, Nancy told him, noting that the dust in the tire marks, which revealed the van's exit onto the highway. But, she added, glancing at the dashboard clock, they're probably too far away by this time for us to catch them. Yes, dang it, Jeff muttered. Nancy drove as rapidly as the law permitted towards Melbourne. All the while, Jeff Tucker peered from one side of the road to the other. Those rascal thieves might just have the nerve enough to stop and count their loot, he said to Nancy. So I'm keeping my eyes sharp peeled. Nancy smiled in spite of the gravity of the situation. Maybe, she replied, though I doubt that those men would be so reckless. Oh, I don't mean out in plain sight. They might have pulled off the road back of somewhere of these closed-up summer places. We'll watch for the tire marks on any dirt road, the young sleuth said. Jeff became so absorbed in looking for the van's tire marks that he never asked Nancy why she had come to see him at the Topham house. Those fake movers, he said as they neared the outskirts of Melbourne. I wonder how far they went. Nancy did not reply until they came to a crossroads. Then she pointed. They turned north here on this dirt road. How much farther is it to Melbourne? Only a mile. As they came into a little town, Nancy asked her companion, which way to the state police headquarters? Go down Central Avenue to Maple Street. Turn left, and there it is. Reaching headquarters, Nancy parked the car and hopped out. Jeff Tucker followed as she walked briskly into the office. I want to report a robbery, she told the desk sergeant after identifying herself. For a moment, the officer, taken back, looked astonished at Nancy. You've been robbed? He asked. In our town? No, Nancy cried out. She gave a quick but complete resume of what had taken place at the Topham's cottage. Jeff Tucker added his account. The police officer needed no further urging. Immediately, he summoned 4 men and issued orders. Now, he said, turning to Nancy, have you any idea which road the thieves took? Yes, officer. When we passed the road crossing a mile outside of town, I saw their truck tracks on the dirt road leading north. I'll be glad to show you. Good, lead the way. But first, I'll send out a general alarm. Hurry, Nancy begged as she started out. Those thieves have at least an hour's head start. Jeff Tucker had been advised to return to his home. Accordingly, he phoned his son to come pick him up with the car. Good luck, he called, as the others pulled away. I sure don't know how I'm going to break this to the Tophams. Nancy was very sorry for him, but she felt the thrill of excitement as she proceeded up the street. The police car followed close behind. Beyond the town, Nancy chose the road which she felt certain the thieves had used. The 2 cars sped along until Nancy unexpectedly came to a fork. Both branches were paved and no marks were visible. Nancy stopped. The police car pulled up alongside. What's the matter? Asked the officer in charge, whose name was Elton. I'm not sure which way to go now. The policemen sprang into their automobile and began to examine the road. Officer Elton said that if the moving van had passed this way, their tire marks had been obliterated by other vehicles. It's impossible to tell which route the thieves had traveled. It'll be strictly guesswork from here, Officer Elton told Nancy. In that case, replied Nancy, it's my guess that the van went to the left. She pointed to the sign which said Garwin 50 miles. Isn't Garwin a fairly large city? She inquired. Yes. Perhaps the thieves headed that way to dispose of the stolen furniture. The officer nodded approvingly. Sounds reasonable, he said. Well, in any case, we can't go much farther because we're near the state line. Nancy had another thought. I'll take the road to Garwin and swing around towards River Heights, she smiled. If I see those thieves, I'll let you know. Well, you watch out, young lady. Those men may lock you up again. I will. Anyway, there'll be plenty of traffic as soon as I reach the main highway. Without giving the policeman an opportunity for further objection, Nancy started up and swung her car to the left. She noted in her rearview mirror that the squad car had turned onto the right-hand road. The officers must have picked up a clue, Nancy said to herself, but I certainly wish I could spot the van and find a chance to look in that old clock. Nancy soon reached the main road. As a mile after mile of highway spun behind her, Nancy's hopes grew dim. There were a number of side roads, and any one of these which a moving van could have eluded pursuers. The young sleuth decided to adhere to the original theory that Sid and his pals headed for Garwin kept on the main highway. Those thieves think Jeff and I are still locked up and won't suspect being followed, she assured herself smilingly. She thought, in that case, they won't be on guard. About 10 minutes later, Nancy stopped at a service station to have her car refueled, and on impulse asked the attendant, Did you by any chance see a moving van pass here recently? Sure did, miss, was the prompt answer. About an hour ago. I noticed it because the driver was going at a terrific speed for a van. Heartened, Nancy thanked him and resumed her pursuit, going past the turn for River Heights. If only I could overtake the truck and somehow examine the Crowley clock before I have to report it to the police, she thought. Again, time lapsed, and Nancy still saw no sign of the moving van on the highway. It was growing dusk, and she decided that she would have to admit defeat. I never caught up to them, she sighed in disappointment, and turning into the opposite lane, headed back for River Heights Road. Just then, Nancy recalled that a little beyond the service station where she had stopped, she had noticed a rather run-down old inn. There was a slim hope, she knew, but the thieves might have put their van behind it while having a meal there. I'll go in and ask anyhow, she decided. Nancy increased her speed as she dared, and within a few minutes came within sight of the inn. It stood back from the road a short distance and was half hidden by tall trees. In front of the building, a battered sign bearing the name Slack Horse Inn creaked back and forth from the post. There was no sign of the van. Beyond the inn, Nancy glimpsed a garage and a large barn. The doors to both were closed. I wonder, Nancy mused, if the moving van is parked inside either one. At the far side of the inn was a small woods with a narrow road leading to it. For safety's sake, Nancy thought it's best to park the car on this little used road. She turned the lights off of the car, pocketed the key, and walked back to the curving driveway leading to the inn. As Nancy made her way forward, her heart pounded. There were tire marks that could have been belonged to Sid's van. They led to the barn. Maybe those thieves are eating, she thought. I'll look. As Nancy stepped onto the porch, the sound of raucous laughter reached her ears. She tiptoed to the window and peered inside. What the young sleuth saw made her gasp, but she felt a glow of satisfaction. In the dingy, dimly lighted room, three men were seated about a table, eating voraciously. They were the thieves who had robbed the Topham bungalow. Chapter 15. Nancy's risky undertaking. I must notify the police at once, Nancy told herself as she recognized the three thieves. Turning away from the window, she crept noisily from the porch. She was about to make a dash for her car when suddenly a thought occurred to her. If the gang have parked their van in the barn, now is my chance to get a look at the Crowley clock. I'm sure those men will be eating for a while, or they may even be staying overnight. Acting on an impulse, Nancy sprinted to her car. Hastily, she snatched a flashlight from the compartment, since it was now dark outside. She made her way cautiously to the rear of the inn. Reaching the barn, she tried the closed doors, her heart pounding. They had not been locked. As she slid back one of the doors, it creaked in alarming fashion. Anxiously, Nancy looked towards the inn, but so far as she could tell, her actions were unobserved. There was no one in sight. Focusing her flashlight, she peered hopefully into the dark interior. A cry of satisfaction escaped her lips. In front of her was the moving van. What luck! She exclaimed, snapping off her light. With a last cautious glance in the direction of the inn, she hastily stepped inside and closed the barn door. With it shut, the interior of the barn was pitch black. Nancy switched on the flashlight again and played it over the moving van. She saw that the rear doors were closed. Securing a firm grip on the handle, she gave it a quick turn. To her dismay, the door did not open. The thieves had locked the van. Oh dear, what shall I do now? She wondered frantically. I'll never be able to break the lock. Desperately, Nancy glanced about. She dared not remain any minutes in the barn, lest the thieves return and find her there. But she had to find out whether the Crowley clock was in the van. Perhaps they left the keys in the ignition, Nancy thought hopefully. She rushed to the front of the van and climbed in the driver's seat, but there were no keys hanging from the ignition lock. Nancy's mind worked frantically. She must find the keys. Perhaps the men had not taken them into the inn, but had concealed them in the truck. Suddenly she remembered that sometimes people hide automobile keys under the floor mat. It was barely possible that the thieves had done this. Hastily she pulled up the corner of her mat, her flashlight revealing a small ring of keys. Luck is with me this time, she murmured, and quickly snatched up the ring. She ran to the back of the rear of the van. After several keys, she found the one that fit the lock. Turning it, she jerked open the door. Nancy flashed the light about inside the truck. To her joy, she recognized the van's contents as furniture stolen from the Topham cottage. What do I do with the clock? It'd be on the bottom of the pile, she wondered as she surveyed the pile of furniture. I'll never find it. Dexterously, she swung herself up into the truck and flashed the light slowly about the chairs, tables, rugs, and boxes. There was no sign of the Crowley clock. Then the beam rested for a moment on an object in the far corner. With a low cry of delight, Nancy saw that her search had been rewarded. Protected by a blanket, an old-fashioned mantel clock rested on top of the table is in the very front of the van. The young sleuth scrambled over the pieces of furniture. She tried to reach the clock. Her dress caught on something sharp and tore. Finally, she arrived within arm's reach of the blanket. She grasped it and pulled the clock towards her. One glance at the timepiece assured her that it fit this description Abby Gowan had given her. It had a square face, and the top was ornamented with a crescent. The Crowley clock at last, Nancy whispered almost unbelievably. But as she was staring at it, her keen ears detected a sound of voices. The thieves. I'll be caught, flashed her mind, and I won't be able to escape a second time. Clutching the blanket and the clock tightly in her arms, Nancy scrambled over the pile of furniture as she struggled to get out of the truck before it was too late. Reaching the door, she leapt lightly onto the floor. She could hear now heavy footsteps coming closer and closer. Nancy shut the truck doors and quickly as possible searched wildly for the keys. What did I do with them? She said frantically. She saw them had fallen on the floor and snatched them up, hurriedly inserting the correct key in the lock. She secured the doors. But as Nancy reeled around, she heard men's angry voices directly outside. Already someone was starting to slide back the barn door. What shall I do? Nancy thought in despair. I'm cornered. She instantly realized that she had no hope to run to the front of the car and place the keys underneath the mat she found. I'll just drop them on the floor, she decided quickly. Maybe the men think they'll drop them there. Then, glancing frantically about for a hiding place, Nancy saw an empty grain bin. Running to it, she still holding the clock, she climbed inside and dropped the blanket over her head just as one of the barn doors slid open. One of the men was speaking loudly. Nancy recognized the voice instantly. It belonged to Sid, the ringleader of the thieves. You had enough to eat, he growled. We're going to get out of here before we have the cops down on our heads. He climbed in the cab, turned on the lights. Nancy held her breath. Would her hiding place be discovered? But the men apparently did not even look towards the bin. In a moment cried out, What'd you do with the keys? I thought you put them underneath the floor mat. I did. Well, they ain't here. Honest, boss, I did. Then I'm here to find them. I don't have all night. All right. Get me away. Get a chance. As Jake went to the truck, he began to carefully search for the keys. Nancy listened fearfully from her hiding place. Say, if you lost them, the ringleader did not finish the threat. For a moment, the third man announced. Here they are on the floor. You must have thought you put them underneath the pocket, Jake. You dropped them instead. I didn't, he retorted. The thieves are obviously in a quarrelsome mood. Just then the leader imposed, Cut your yakking. We ain't got time to fight unless we want to land behind bars. And if we do, it'll be your fault, Sid Sachs. You left that girl to starve. Shut up, the leader snarled. After a few more angry words, the thieves climbed in the front seat, and the moment the engine started. In relief, Nancy heard the men go. The moment they left a safe distance from the barn, she climbed out of the bin. Nancy watched along to make sure that the van had taken the road to Garwin. Then, snatching up the flashlight, clutching the precious clock to her arms, she turned and ran. I better cut through the woods, she decided. As Nancy darted among the trees, she cast an anxious glance over her shoulder. But to her instant relief, she saw that she was not being followed. There seemed to be no one in the vicinity of the Black Horse Inn. I had a narrow escape that time, the young sleuth told herself. I hate to think what might have happened if I had been discovered. She clutched the mantel clock tightly in her arms, but it was worth the risk I took. I found the clock and maybe the secret to Joshua Crowley's will. Reaching the car, Nancy sprang inside. She took the key from her pocket and inserted it in the ignition lock. I'll notify the police as fast as I can, she decided. Perhaps state troopers can catch those men before they dispose of the furniture. Just then, Nancy was about to start the motor. Her glance fell upon the Crowley clock, which she had placed securely on her seat. Did it contain Joshua Crowley's mysterious notebook, as she suspected? Oh, I must find out. She got her flashlight out. Since the clock was too unwieldy to open inside the car, Nancy stepped outside and laid it on the ground. She unfastened the glass door and ran her hand around the walls. There was nothing inside. She tried the back. Only the mechanism timepiece was there. Gone, Nancy groaned. Oh dear, has my luck run out? Could it be, she wondered, that the Tophams had discovered the notebook only to destroy it? Nancy discarded this thought as quickly as it came to mind, for she recalled the conversation she had heard between Ada and Isabel. No, the Tophams were ignorant as herself concerning the location of the will was. It was more likely that Abby Rowan had been confused in her story. After all, she had not re-dared that the notebook would be found in the clock. Nancy made herself a deduction. I was almost certain I'd find that notebook, she murmured in disappointment. But a moment later, she took heart again. It must be somewhere else, she told herself. Turning the clock upside down, Nancy gave it a hard shake. Something inside moved. Hopefully, she repeated again. Unless I'm wrong, Nancy thought excitedly, there's something inside this clock besides works. She examined it more closely. An extra piece of cardboard, back of the face, and something in between the two. The notebook, maybe. After a vain attempt to remove the heavy cardboard with her fingers, Nancy took a small screwdriver from the glove compartment. With the tool, it required but an instant to remove the two hands from the clock and jerk off the face. As the cardboard fell to the floor, Nancy peered inside and gave a low cry of joy. There, inside one side of the clock, attached to a hook in the top, dangled a tiny dark blue notebook. Chapter 16. The Capture. Got voices going out on me, guys. Give me a second. Yay. Chapter 16. The Capture. Eagerly, Nancy removed the little notebook from the hook. By holding the book directly under the beam of the flashlight, she could make out the words on the cover. Property of Joshua Crowley. I found it at last, she thought excitedly. Quickly turning the first few pages, she saw that they were yellowed with age. The writing was fine and cramped, and the ink had faded. The pages were crowded with business notations, and it was difficult to make out the words. Nancy was thrilled, for that she was positive that the notebook would disclose what Joshua Crowley had done with the last will. Yet she realized she could not hope to read through the book without considerable loss of precious time. She must not delay another instant in reporting to the police. I'll read the notebook later, she decided, and tucked it into her pocket. Then she put the clock together. Hurriedly, laying the timepiece back on the car seat, Nancy covered it with her coat, sliding it behind the wheel. Starting the engine, she swung the convertible onto the highway. Nancy cast an anxious glance in the direction the thieves had taken, and watched for side roads which the men might turn to avoid main traffic. Perhaps I'd better phone the state police from this first service station or store I come to. Then she noticed a sign. Alternate route to Garwin. Main road under repair. Reaching the intersection, she stopped to see if familiar tire tracks of the van indicated it had turned onto the dirt road. It had. Now, what shall I do? As Nancy debated, she saw a car coming towards her. Her hopes soared. She could not mistake it was a police prowl car with a red revolving roof light. Instantly, Nancy grabbed her flashlight and jumped from the car. Standing at the side of the road, she waved her light, and in a few minutes, the police sedan stopped. I'm Nancy Drew. she said hurriedly to the men inside. Are you looking for the furniture thieves in the van? Yes, we are. You're the girl who reported them. Nancy nodded and then pointed down the side road. I think those are their tire marks. They were at the Black Horse Inn but left. You can identify them? The driver asked. Oh, yes. Then please follow us. I'll radio for a car to approach the thieves' vans from the other end of the road. The police car sped down the bad road to Garwin, with Nancy following closely behind. They rode for several minutes. Oh dear, Nancy thought. I must be wrong. We should have overtaken the van by this time. Another 10 minutes passed. Then, unexpectedly, she caught a glimpse of a red tail light on the road far ahead. It must be the van, Nancy told herself hopefully. The light doesn't appear to be moving fast enough for an automobile. Evidently, the police were at the same opinion. For the moment their car slowed, Nancy figured they would stop. They would not stop the van until they saw the other police car arriving from the opposite direction. A few moments later, she could see the headlights in the distance. The squad car in front of Nancy now sped ahead and pulled up alongside of the van. Pull over, one of the officers shouted at the man in the cab. Instead of doing so, the van put on a burst of speed. But in order to avoid smashing an oncoming squad car, the driver pulled too far into the right. The van swerved sharply. Its two right front wheels went off into the deep ditch, and the vehicle toppled over. In an instant, the officers were out of the car, and the fugitives covered. By this time, Nancy, who had stopped her car by the side of the road, came running up. One of the officers turned to her and asked, "You want to identify these men?" As a light was flashed upon each of the thieves in turn, Nancy nodded. "This one is Sid. He's the one who locked me in the closet," she declared, pointing to the leader. "The other ones are Jake and Parky." The prisoners stared in complete disbelief. They were astounded to see Nancy Drew standing there. When it dawned on Sid that she evidently was responsible for their capture, he started to say something, then changed his mind and remained silent. The prisoners were quickly identified from licenses and other papers as wanted criminals. One of the officers opened the rear of the van and asked Nancy if she could identify stolen furniture. "Some of it. That desk was taken from the room in which I was locked in the closet." "Good enough," said the trooper. "These men will get long sentences for this. They'll be held on several charges. Are we willing to go with us and press charges against them?" "Yes, if it's necessary," Nancy promised reluctantly. "But I don't live in this county, and I'm eager to get home right away." "Don't you have enough evidence against them? I think they're the same men who also stole several silver heirlooms from the Turner sisters." Sid and his companion winced and did not speak. "I see," said the trooper. "Well, I guess there's no need for you to go to headquarters now," the officer admitted. "I'll take your address, and if your testimony should be required, I'll get in touch with you." When Nancy showed her driver's license identification, the policeman glanced at her with new interest. Taking her aside, he said, "So you're the daughter of Carson Drew. I see you're following in his footsteps. Starting rather young, aren't you?" Nancy laughed. "It was all by accident that I arrived at Toffin Bungalow at a critical moment," she protested modestly. "Not many girls would use their wits the way you did," the officer observed. "Unless I'm mistaken, these fellows are old hands at this game. They're no doubt the men who had been stealing various things from around Moon Lake for a number of seasons. The residents will be mighty grateful for what you've done. And that Mrs. Topham you spoke of, she ought to give you a liberal reward for saving her household goods." Nancy shook her head. "I don't want a reward. Really, I don't." "Just the same, you've earned one," insisted the officer, who said his name was Cohen. If you'd like, I'll tell my chief the whole story and he'll take the matter up with Mrs. Toffin. You don't you don't know her, Nancy remarked, and I do. She'll never offer a reward. Even if she did, I wouldn't accept it. After a slight pause, she added, in fact, I prefer my name not be mentioned to her at all. Officer Cohen shook his head in disbelief. Well, all right, then. If you're sure you don't want any credit for capturing the thieves, I won't say anything. You're certain? I am, Nancy replied firmly, for particular reasons of my own. The trooper smiled. It must be a mighty good one. There is one favor you could do for me, said Nancy. Ask your chief to put in a good word for caretaker Jeff Tucker to the Tophams. Perhaps he won't lose his job. Be glad to, Officer Cohen promised. And if you're really anxious not to figure into the case, I'll see if we can get along without your testimony. Nancy thanked him, and then suddenly thought of the old clock. At the moment it was lying in the front of her car, at least a dozen yards away. Should she reveal this information? She decided against doing so in front of the thieves, who, though they could not hear what they were saying, could see everything plainly. I'll wait until a more opportune time, Nancy concluded. It was agreed among the state police that one of them would stay to guard the van and keep the radio car standing there. The other three troopers would take the captive thieves to headquarters. The three prisoners, their faces sullen, were crowded into a car. One of the troopers took the wheel, while the other one beside him kept the handcuffed trio closely covered. Officer Cohen, a strapping, husky man, turned to Nancy. I'll ride with you, he said. You're going to go past headquarters, aren't you? I'm on the way to River Heights, she responded. Then the station is on your route. You can drop me off if you will. Well, why, of course, she stammered. I'd be glad to. At once she thought of the Crowley clock. What if Officer Cohen could not accept her explanation as to how he helped herself to the heirloom and the strange contents? If this happened, her progress in solving the mystery might receive a severe setback. Even as these disturbing ideas raced through her mind, the troopers started towards the blue convertible. Nancy braced herself. I'll have to fess up, she said to herself, and take the consequences. And that was the last of the 4 chapters of this section of Nancy Drew's Secret of the Old Clock. Well, Nancy found the notebook. Now will be Nancy trying to explain how she got a hold of the clock to the police and the police officer riding with her. Could be very interesting for Nancy and the continuing of the story. I hope you're liking this story. This is a fun little adventure story that I wanted to share with all of you. Most of you know that we've been reading the last 3 years the Hardy Boys mysteries. And it was nice to add Nancy Drew to the availability for the show. Now, I have got a surprise for everybody. Coming up this week, as you guys know, we have a special event. We have Valentine's Day this coming Saturday. It's February 14th. And I thought, well, what if I do a movie? And I thought, let's have a movie for Valentine's. A love story. A romantic comedy, as it were. A classic romantic comedy. I have just the one for everyone here. And I think you guys are going to enjoy it. And you might recognize the name. Because this coming Saturday, Valentine's Day, the most loved of all love stories, The great Jose Ferrer as Cyrano de Bergerac will be this coming Saturday, February 14th, Valentine's Day, at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. This will be the first time showing of this movie. It is a public domain movie. And it's a lot of fun. Some swashbuckling, sword fighting, some heroes, some villains, and a love never spoken to of. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm hoping you guys join me and stop in on Saturday night, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you've got your loved one with you, tell them this, you can stop by and watch the movie with us. This coming Saturday, Cyrano de Bergerac, live here on Twitch for Valentine's Day. And who knows, maybe there'll be other surprises going on for Valentine's Day as well. We'll see. It is time for us to go. And I appreciate every one of you stopping in on a regular basis to sit back, relax, and enjoy the books and the stories and the chapters and all the craziness this show offers. As we do with our Thursday night show, I want to offer a final quote for the night. There's a lot of really garbage stuff going on in the world right now. People treating people with a lot of hate and, just vileness. And it's kind of sad. It is kind of sad. But I have a quote from an old, wise man. Kindness in words creates confidence. Kindness in thinking creates profoundness. Kindness in giving creates love. Lao Tzu. Kindness in words creates confidence. Kindness in thinking creates profoundness. Kindness in giving creates love. Lao Tzu. Sometimes we need to remember that, guys. We really, really do. I am Joel K. This is Accessibly Live, the book club reading room. Every single Sunday night, live here at 8 Central Standard Time, live, we read public domain books. We break them down into chapters, read the entire book, and then take a little break and read another book. I'm glad you guys are joining us. Hope you guys continue to join us this year. 2026 will be the year of a lot of fun, adventurous books, some mysteries, some suspense, some humor, and a few movies along the way, like we have this Valentine's Day. We're going to get out of here. Be well, be safe, be kind. Take care of each other. Think about your friends, your family, your brothers, your sisters. Think about the people who are losing their friends and family to some of the garbage that's going on out there right now. Take care of each other. Love each other. Be kind to each other. We're going to get out of here. Have a good night. We will see you all this coming Thursday for the Conversation Station. And we will see you Saturday for Cyrano de Bergerac, the movie, here on Accessibly Live, the book club reading room. Take care, you guys.